Thank you, everybody, for joining today. These are definitely interesting times that we're living in, forcing us to all rethink how we're going about our daily lives, how we're working, how we're interacting with people. And of course, now that everybody is working from home, we are in a whole different world. People are beginning to manage people and work with people remotely. And unless you've done that before, it can be a very tricky thing to do. So we're here today to talk to you about that and give you some thoughts and ideas and tips on where to even begin. You have a team, you're interacting with them daily in your office, around the water cooler, you have a great vibe going, you have a great corporate culture, you're achieving things, you're accomplishing things, you're moving the ball forward. But now your teams are all over the place. And obviously you have to change your entire style and approach to what you're doing to maintain a good corporate culture, to maintain morality. And so we're here to talk to you today about what you can do. So gentlemen, let's start off with, now that people have their teams remotely, what are some of the first things that they have to take into account? And of course, we're going to talk today about process management, communication, tools and software that you can use. But really, what are the first things that somebody should be thinking about when now they have all their teams remotely and they can't really interact with them and work very differently?
Yeah, so here, first of all, when you cannot see the team members, as a manager who just recently worked with team group in the same room, so he saw what everyone is doing right now, and he was able like easily control his team. But currently, such a person doesn't see anyone and cannot see what somebody is doing. And this is like first time when I switched from offline to online teams. This was first impression and first thought. Well, how would I control the team right now? And this was pretty challenging for the first time. Metro, what do you say?
I can say for it's now it's really difficult situation for different types of company because the world has been changed, and I think even after the finish of this COVID situation, most of teams can't connect back to office because working from home. It's a very popular practice from year to year, especially for freelancers and especially for this our IT branch. So inside this webinar, I want to present together with you and with our colleagues our vision how it can build for effective organization for such teams. For me, it was a very early experience, even 15 years ago. I will tell about it later on, how it was built in those times. And I think that main principle here for all teams is good discipline, first of all. And of course, a lot of problems you should be aware of because you need one of the most difficult tasks when working from home is mentally separate your office from your home. We are also talking about it later on. So this is my vision of our mission of this webinar.
Sure. And discipline goes both ways. It's, if you're managing a team, you need a certain level of discipline as a manager and also as an employee, obviously. If you've never worked from home, it's a whole different challenge. It's how do you set up your routine where you make yourself feel like you're walking into the office and starting your work day. Especially now with everybody, you have families at home, you have kids at home, you have spouses at home. So there's a lot more activity. And now we're all tasked with, this is a whole different challenge, being tasked with teaching your children and keeping them entertained and being able to set certain things. So that discipline is so important, and it's not so easy for a lot of people, right? It's a very tricky thing, keeping yourself doing your tasks and accomplishing your goals and keeping your performance up when you have all these distractions going on and you don't have your friend sitting next to you who you can ask a quick question to, or walk into your manager's office and do a quick pop by, or start the day with a couple of chuckles of a TV show you were watching the night before. The entire approach to your day has changed. And so discipline is great, of course, as a first place to to think about on both ways, how you're disciplining yourself and how you can help your employees discipline themselves, right?
Mm-hmm. Of course, yeah, and moreover, it's not like to start being disciplined after I was neglecting all the principles, but people typically tend to do the work, and they tend to do the work in the best way they could. So speaking about discipline, I assume that most of people already elaborated some routines and some tricks how to stay focused, how to stay organized, how to not being distracted to Facebook, to the smartphone, and so on and so forth. But when the office, the office is closed, and I need to work from home, all my routines that I set for myself really gone with the office. So right now I need to find some new routines. Like previously, it was really morning ritual for me to wake up, to eat some breakfast, go to the office by car, then get a cup of coffee there, talk to a few people, sit at the computer, and then I was fully focused on the work. So this was typical flow, and I really used to it. And right now, I need to find something new, some new tricks for me to start working. And this is really tricky for people who didn't used to work from home.
Well, even like you just said, that morning routine of even traveling into work, you're listening to your favorite songs, or you're listening to Howard Stern or some newscaster on the radio. So even being able to do something as simple as that to kind of calm yourself and transition from home to work becomes a whole different game if your home and work are actually in the same place.
Yeah. Exactly. And yesterday, I realized that I need to put some, I don't know, my work and stuff in one corner, and everything else to another corner. So I realized that I need to have separated my home office from all other stuff. To at least mentally to try to switch between home and work.
Sure. Definitely very, very important to set aside. If you can't set a particular space aside, if you can't make a room in your house, your temporary workspace or your office, even just, they say it's recommended, even just set up a few feet of space that becomes your work environment. So you go and you sit down at this desk and chair, and you're in your workspace. And when you walk away from that, you're no longer in that workspace. So for instance, at the end of the day, at 6 o'clock or whenever you stop, you walk away from that workspace and your day is done. So you can transition back to end of the day family time and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I know a few people who even have different computers for work and for some not
Their personal.
Personal usage. And other I know a few who switch desktop wallpaper to, to to appear in the office or in the home this way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because if we are talking about home office, you need to design the place to work in apartment, in your apartment. Even if you have single bedroom as your workplace, workspace. Uh, so everyone gets distracted by the non-work related activities such as watching the TV or checking the phone. If you are working from home, you must be aware to these potential pitfalls and take the control of the situation. And your own workplace, your own desk, uh, it's needed for this. One of the main successful things here, from my opinion, and as Vladimir told us already, we need to separate your home from your office, even if it's in the same place.
Right. If it's in the middle of the living room, it still needs to be a dedicated space for your
Yeah,
work.
yeah, it's very very important because without it, you can't be successful in such a remote job.
Sure. Well, let's talk about some of the process management steps that people need to think about and go through offline and online as they set up their remote teams and transition from working in the office to working remotely.
I want to tell you a story, as I promised in the beginning. I was very, very young guy, and I worked in more than 1 year as project manager on a customer site in Germany. So I'm sitting in office. It was times without Skype. It was only ICQ. Maybe you remember it. ICQ, just messenger, without calls, without video. And I'm trying to organize communication between me, between the customer, and between our remote team, which is located in Ukraine. So the main part here, the main task for management here, it's a good documentation, first of all, and a good tracking system, second of all, because you can't, even now, we all have a possibility to use a Skype, to use a lot of messengers, to use a lot of video calls, but even in this case, you need to set it up, all the tasks, you need to check all the task status inside the tracking system. So the management here set for several steps: planning, realization, and checking. The same like in usual office, but here you can see your employees, and you need to you need to hold yourself and your employees because when you are own boss, it's important it's important that you constantly review your effort. If you are talking about remote job, and if you manage the people, you also need to know if your task will be done or not done, and it also depends from different condition, from situation in the home office and from the task which you are getting to the your employer.
Sure. Yeah, task management and monitoring becomes a lot more difficult when you just can't pop in. Hey, how's that report going? Or being able to just stay on top of people. And we'll get into that more in a minute. We do have one question from somebody, and it's any suggestions for single mothers with kids and no support, so no nannies or daycare, preschool, anything like that. So you got your kids home, you're a single mother, and you're trying to get your work done. Any suggestions for that scenario?
I definitely haven't been in such a situation. So yeah, what to do here? Basically, for me, I see a few types of activities, and for each type of activity, I need some different environment and different like situation I am in. Like for meetings, I need the environment to be quiet, like to close the doors, to send kids to other rooms, or I don't know, to grandparents. And but this is not a regular task, so it might happen a few times a day. And most of my time I spend like doing something without important meetings. So in this time I can really sit next to my family, next to I don't know, to have my cat on my knees, and it will not really distract me from doing the work. Of course, there might be cases when kid is I don't know, nagging, crying, and want something from you. But in such cases, the easiest way is to like do whatever is needed for the kid, and then return to the work. So there is no silver bullet as far as I see.
Okay.
Dima, what do you think?
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. But as we already discussed, it depends from the personal activities of your employees. Because if you're talking about the management of the teams, you also need to check their effectiveness here for doing some tasks, and maybe some of type of employees will be even more effective from home. Some of types not. And you need to provide such a set of the tasks, and you need to organize working process to manage all kind of effectiveness from your team. For example, Ivan working very nice in night hours, and he can produce the results. And you can organize the task for him for such way if you know about it. And Olga as QA working only in the morning, and Olga will be ready to check the Ivan's tasks in the morning. So if you know about such things from your employees, you can build your development process step by step, even more effective in the office, but not in all cases.
Exactly, and moreover, yeah, it leads to another important topic. For online work, I would transform this online versus offline format right now to synchronous and asynchronous work. Because right now, as managers, we need to build work of the team, so everyone will know what to do and will be able to execute tasks in just when it is appropriate for them. So as managers, we need to be prepared that team doesn't work anymore within the same hours. But someone can go, I don't know, to grocery when someone else needs his help. And yeah, basically we need to organize the work so everyone can know what to do and autonomously without waiting for help from other side. And this is one of the most important points from my perspective here.
I think all of this, it comes back to, you have to establish trust first and foremost between yourself and your employees, and it's a two-way street. And with that trust, obviously, very important, there's communication and setting expectations and laying out your tasks. You have to have a clear understanding both ways. obviously we're all in a very unique situation now with children being home and schools closed and all of that. So having those kids around as a manager, you have to take that into account when you're setting the expectations of your employees. There's only so much that your employees can do if they're at home with children and have no access to help. It's just a matter of fact that what we have to deal with right now. So what establishing that trust, knowing that the single mother at home is going to do her job, it's going to be a little bit tricky for her. So you as the employee need to talk to your manager and explain the situation that you're in and how you're dealing with your day. As much as you're managing your job and your tasks, you also have to manage your household. Maybe it's setting up a schedule for the children early in the day. You know that you have a call from 1 to 1:30, so you make sure that they're busy with something specific that's going to keep them busy that whole time, whether it's reading a book, playing a game, watching a video, something, so you know that those times that you have to be focused, you have to be on a call or things like that, you can be assured as much as possible that your children are going to be entertained. But also setting those expectations with your manager so that they know in advance. You do have to jump off real quick for a minute to tend to something. It starts a fire in the kitchen. You have to run in and do something about it. But as long as you can communicate, set those expectations manager in advance, they know what you're dealing with. And as long as you maintain that trust through communication and laying out the test, in the next 90 days, we accomplish this. And knowing that you're putting trust in your employees that they're going to take ownership in what they have to do, and having trust in your manager that they're going to support you, that makes for a two-way street. But they're there to help you as much as you are there to help them.
So yes, because in this case, if you are talking about, for example, a single mother or so on, for this case, an effective manager can organize personal schedule for such employees. And in this case, such employees will be most effective. As example, as I told you 5 minutes ago. And also, you need to told your people maybe some trainings how it can be done from home and how they can use effective breaks. If you want to perform well as freelance or just for work from home, then you need to schedule your breaks and organize micromanagement. It forces you to work in sprints, some very, very short sprints, if you have such condition as you're talking about it. And even from 20 to 90 minutes, and then forces you to take a break.
Right.
And in this case, it's just like a suggestion that most from home feel that their productivity much more better than they using such approaches. And they can take in a longer break between every 5 work break cycle. And it also helps their productivity. For example, if it's possible, of course, for quarantine condition in the country, you can go outside for a walk or go in some gym after some work cycles, and will help you to get energized so you can be ready for another task. Breaks and personal schedule, it's also possible. If you can't manage and if you can't organize, can have a separate room like normal office. You can use such approach, in my opinion. Well, what do you think about it?
Exactly. And when I've been thinking about is it better to work from home or from the office? Of course, one of the first thought was, okay, from home I can be as flexible as I want. I can do. I can start working earlier, then have some few hours in the middle of the day, and can do something in between the tasks, like to go for shopping somewhere. But since I started to really work from home, I realized that I need to still I need to have some strict schedule of my work, and I everything to some specific hours, like specific hours, hours for doing my job. Because if home routines and job activities will be mixed, in this case, focus is really lost, and it turned to be way more difficult for me to manage all the time. So really strict schedule, and regarding the breaks, yeah, I completely agree with you, but I think that breaks are important also when you work from the office. So yeah,
Sure.
but maybe in the office you have some more abilities and notifications to do the break, like when colleagues will go smoking or doing coffee, you will notice it and decide to do the break. But at home, it might be more difficult.
Well, so
Yeah.
as a manager, oh, you had something, Dimitri?
Okay, I just want to say that socialization, working together with family and together with your remote colleagues, it's also not great results for the not so great result if you're working from home. So even in virtual mode, it's very important it's very important to take a mental break and go out, connect with colleagues. It's very important to remember to socialize. When you work at office, you have a small talk with colleagues, even not about a job. On Monday morning, everybody asks about your weekend, and in Friday they're asking about the parties and so on. Now, in new cases, you also need to communicate with your colleagues about such things, even if you are not sitting in the same office. So it also need to do it.
Well, I think that communication has a couple of aspects to it, which we could talk about. The communication amongst from manager to employee, and communication from employee to employee, keeping that corporate culture alive.
Some routines really help not only for the specific person, but for the entire team. First of all, I establish some team rituals and routines. For example, according to Scrum methodology or other methodologies, we have daily stand-up meeting when everyone is online. We chat a bit about the weather, about how some small talks, how the evening passed, and so on and so forth. And then, right now we spend 5-10 minutes just for these small talks, because this is really appeared to be important, and all synchronization is going here. And have these meetings regularly at the specific time each day. This is really important. So this is one of the elements. Dima, which one do you have?
You're absolutely right, but now in this case, sometimes we are using daily meeting twice per day, in the beginning of the day and in the end of the day, especially if we are talking about some short-term sprints, for example. If the tasks are not so long and we need to check it as fast as we can. So, and if we are talking about such meetings, I always ask the guys and girls, what about your day? How do you feel today? And so on, as you told us already. So it's absolutely normal practice. And also we have, of course, as all teams, we have a common chat, for example, on Skype for such project. And if something happens during the day with the technology or just some questions, we can we can put some questions and some answers inside this chat. It's also provide us as presence effect. If you are sitting in one office and you can ask your colleague about how I can input this part of the code inside the table, for example, and we can do it as virtual.
Sure. And what I can add here for the teams to stay focused, everyone will should know exactly what he will do today. With a list of tasks, we can execute. Without some specific tasks and item on my table, it is way more difficult to execute and to be productive. So everyone should have their tasks and should understand what to do and should understand why these tasks appear. This is more about tracking of the progress. The team should know goals, and everyone should move towards these goals. And as a manager, I will not do some micromanagement. I will not ask what do you do currently, what are you working on right now? Please show me a screen, and so on and so forth. So all these techniques are not needed when the team knows its tasks and knows why the tasks are needed. So we can track just the progress, seeing when tasks are done. And this is, for the team, this is more appropriate. Just track when the work is done instead of track that everyone is busy right now.
It comes back to that level of trust that you have to have with that your employees are doing their job, and when they're not in your and the same thing that your employees trust your managers, doing their job and has their best intentions laid out, and setting those expectations and those goals. It can almost be said that it's more important when your team is working remotely to make sure that every aspect of that goal is clearly defined. Every expectation is set forth, so you don't have to interact all day and stay on top of people. Because let's face it, if you're a micromanager, you have no chance of managing a remote team correctly. You have to let things go. You have to let your people do your work, and you have to have confidence that they're doing their job. If you aren't, and you feel that need to stay on top of them all day, there's no way that you're going to be able to successfully manage a remote team. You're talking about communication, though, and what are some tools that you guys use, and what would you recommend for people out there? And communication runs the whole gamut, from an instant message, from just a text message to a video call to team meetings and things like that. And there are numerous tools out there that people can use. What would you guys suggest for those different processes?
Here you're absolutely right, because a lot of possibilities communication we can use in our everyday practice for chat and for everyday meetings. It's a Skype or Google Hangouts, and also it's very comfortable to use the Slack. So if you are talking about technical part, Vladimir.
We massively using Slack nowadays because it's really handy to have different channels for different topics.
For different team members.
Everything is organized. Sorry?
For different team members, you can organize own channel.
And exactly. And everything is organized under the accounts. So each project, basically, I work with few projects. So each project has its own account, and all the channels that are related to the project are organized there. So it is pretty useful, and I can find information in this case easily. So for daily just texting, we use Slack mostly, and good old Skype. Maybe not that good, but still. And
Still,
for video calls and audio calls, doesn't matter. We use the same Skype, but also Zoom and Google Hangout. So I think this is like industry standard almost right now. And recently we've seen that Blue Jeans tool appeared, and it works really good. So this is some competitor of Zoom.
What
And
platform? I'm sorry. Which one?
Blue Jeans. Yeah, so it works similar to Zoom, but some people say that it works more stably. But yeah. So.
As a manager, now that you have your teams remotely, do you communicate the same in terms of you have one-on-one meetings weekly with your team members in person, you have team meetings, you have different group meetings? Do you maintain all those meetings, or do you accommodate and try and change that approach now that everybody's remote?
Sure. I think we do not need to change approach because if you are taking part in numerous meetings, of course, if it's needed, if it's really important, it's all the same presence effect for you and for your employees. So it's still important to take in part because your employees can see you as manager, and they can see what what you can organize and what you can plan for next steps, and you can discuss all the tasks, you can discuss all the approaches, all the problems. So for such remote job, for such job from home, meetings is very important.
Yeah, and the meetings, we have really few types of the meetings, and one-on-one meetings, for example, that you mentioned, they serve the specific goal need, and this need still exists in the current environment, in remote work. So we need to keep track of what is happening with the team members, how do they feel about the job, about colleagues, and so on and so forth. So we need to communicate with team members separately. So these one-on-one meetings still exist, and all other meetings, like we used to have offline retrospective meetings mostly, but right now there is no way to do offline, but the need is still there. We still need to have all these meetings, but remotely.
From a communications perspective, again, how about so when you're all working in your office, you're able to pop in your manager's office or ask your employee sitting next to you, hey, I got a quick question for you, walk into someone's room. Now that's very different too. So as a manager, there's a certain need to make yourself available for your employees, even more so in that way that you need to set up your employees to make them even more comfortable asking questions and going to you for things in a different way than being able to just pop in. So would you do things like setting a few minutes every hour for open time, or making yourself, how do you set that availability and make your employees that you're managing more comfortable coming to you with a quick question, as opposed to going off on a tangent, doing something their own because they don't want to bother you? That sense of bother often comes into play when you have people working remotely. Less so when they walk by your office, they see you're not on the phone, they knock, they come in, they ask you a question. Now they can't really do that. So how do you as a manager instill that trust that that they can reach out to you anytime and that you're available for them?
It's all the same. We can use all communication messengers and everybody from the team feel free to ask the question. And if it's possible for me right now, I can answer him, or maybe I can answer him later on. and that's all. For a short, simple question for Slack or from Skype, it's not a problem to do it such a way. It doesn't matter if you sit in the office or you are sitting near your laptop. You can print the answer and send it to your employer, or you can have a short call with him.
Exactly, and the same for the teams that I work with. So I'm available in Slack or Skype for text messages always, and I will answer when I can do this. But everyone knows that if I cannot answer right now, I will do this just later when I'm available. And in terms of calls, so I know some guys just share the calendar with team, with other people, so everyone will see busy hours and open hours. But I would prefer doing this just for setting up some long meetings. In this case, this is useful, but for quick calls, we just write each other a quick note, like when like, are you available in 5 minutes to hop on the quick call, and we synchronize this way.
This approach, one more thing, this approach even is better because you can see all communication history inside this chat, and if your employee asking you about something, you can show him this chat and I already tell it, or you can check it here.
So in some ways, some of these processes that you might put into place now are actually very good to take back to the office when your team comes back to the office. So that would be an example, having a detailed list of your communication and saying, nope, this is what was said, or things like that. I know plenty of companies who actually host their team meetings online, even if 4 people could be sitting in the same office and they're all on a computer dialing in, so that everybody who works remotely doesn't feel like they're missing out by not being there. So instilling that sense of we're all one team, we're all working the same way, we're all dialing in, even when half of us are in the office, we still all dial in. So it makes everybody feel like they're on the same level playing field.
And one of the teams in our company work they have from time to time half a day in online mode. Like they dial in to some audio conference, and after some small talks, they start doing their job. Each one his job, but they can speak easily because everyone is connected to the same audio conference. So they try to mimic offline environment this way.
What about leaving voice messages so that there's nothing lost in translation, or a sense of urgency can come out in the voice versus a text message or anything like that? Do you use voice messages?
Well, to be honest, I don't like using voice messages because for me, it's much easier to read the message, and I can do this in parallel with something else. And for the voice message, I need to just put everything aside, turn on audio, and in some cases it might be not really helpful.
Could disrupt your flow.
See the voice message and won't be able to play it right now.
Sure.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Sometimes I can use such voice messages, but not for critical things. All critical things must be printed.
In writing. And why would you say that? Why do they need to be in print? So that everything is laid out clearly?
Yeah.
Excellent. So as we're talking about this, we keep coming back and we bring up monitoring progress of your employees, tracking their tasks, making sure that they're getting the job done. How do you go about doing that without staying on top of them, without that micromanagement kind of aspect? You want to make sure that they're doing their work, that the progress is moving forward, that they're performing well, that they're getting their tasks done. So how do you do that? It's a whole different setup now, right? Or is it?
Well, for the tools, basically, we don't use too many tools for our processes. So we used to have some task management tool. Mostly we use Jira as a issue management software. But for some of the projects, we use Trello or Asana, or even GitHub issues. So this is probably main tool that we use for all the processes. Also, messengers, all the tools for calls, and I think this is bare minimum. For each separate team, each specific team, we can add up some specific tools, but it depends on a process, because each team has its own unique process. And for some of the teams, we used to draw something during the meetings. So we've been using some online drawing tools, online whiteboards, for instance. But yeah, these are more specific. What about you?
It's absolutely the same approach. Jira is on the top, of course, and I think for most of the tasks, for description of most of the tasks, we can use the Jira, and for description of whole project, we can use the Confluence as model of the Jira.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, exactly.
I think for most of the project, this more than enough, even more than enough, all the possibilities that the Jira provides us. And in some project, on one project, we also use the Trello, but Jira, for my opinion, is better. For if you can use a Jira, it will be absolutely right decision for such kind of management and such kind of management of the tasks and organization and prioritization of the task for your team.
Mm-hmm. I know that some companies use software that monitors what people are doing at the moment, like doing some screenshots from time to time, to tracking time per each task, and so on and so forth. But this is not the way how we work, and as I said, we try not to micromanage the teams, so it's not really useful for us. And also I know that some guys use just personally for themselves tools like Pomodoro. So this is one of good approaches how to structure time. And Pomodoro says, if I'm not mistaken, to do pauses every 1 hour for like 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So the tool just reminds to do pauses, breaks by schedule. So
yeah.
Of these tools, are any better suited for managing remotely versus managing in person? So if you were advising a company, a new company setting up, and they had everybody working in one office versus everybody working remotely, would you look at these tools differently, or can you use them in the same ways?
Well, when everyone works in the same office, we can work even without the tools. So basically, Kanban board, historically, it was really whiteboard with on a wall with cards, and each card is a separate task. So the team members would go and put the card to different column. When they like finish the task, they would put the task to column done. And currently, all these digital tools they mimic basically what we had previously in offline mode. So right now we as we talked about Jira and other tools, they all absolutely work for online offices, and it depends not on online versus offline, but it depends on like size of the project, complexity of the project, some number of items that you need to track. And for lightweight processes, for small projects, we can use some more simplistic software. But for more complex projects, when we need some automation to the issue tracking software, so we would tend to use Jira or something similar. But just
if you are talking about the tracking software, we also can use our own producer. Maybe we can speak about right now. It's our tracking tool for reporting and for organization and for forecast of the teams. So you can use producer for such approaches also.
Granted, producer is an Archer product, so a lot of companies do not have access to something so wonderful.
But I know that a lot of companies, especially big companies, also can provide such tools, their own tools, or maybe, I don't know, it's from Microsoft, it builds, I forget the correct name, it's a huge system for Microsoft, which can organize such things. So maybe it also will be important to provide reporting and to control all your employees in such a mode, even not in such a mode. If we are talking in office, reports also needed for us.
How about another topic too? Another question along the same lines, though, is performance assessment when you have remote teams, right? Do you, when you're doing a performance assessment of somebody who works next to you, there are a lot of other aspects that might come into play: their personality, are they a happy person? Are they, motivated, bringing some energy to the office, managing remotely? You never see the person, you never interact with them personally. So do your assessments of your employees change? And how you assess them, what you might be judging them based on, and things like that?
The assessment itself, it's not, it shouldn't be changed. But I think that people tend to get information in different way. In cases when we work just next to the person and see how the person communicate, do something, things, interact with colleagues. And on the other hand, when we do not see the person and we see just some tasks are executing and finalizing, but we do not really see how people do their work and how do they live their day. So it's really subjectiveness, but I think that assessment is slightly different for these two cases. But in the end, we need to assess results of the work. Really, so this is something that as managers we need to keep in mind. So main thing is result, and the goal is really achieved. So and it doesn't really matter for me if someone would work the same as office hours from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Or he would split the day and have some siesta in the middle. For me, it shouldn't really matter.
As long as they're getting their jobs done, their tasks done, and moving
Exactly.
forward.
You can use the metrics only based on the final results, and this is absolutely right approach.
Right. Well, we also know that, monitoring tools and things of that nature can lead to demotivating your team, adding more work for them, adding a sense of distrust. If your employee thinks that you don't trust them because you're trying to micromanage them, you're trying to manage their tasks and their progress in such a micro way that they begin to say, they don't trust me, this is not what I like. It starts to push them away as opposed to work more cohesively, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And exactly because of this, I wouldn't recommend to use such things. So we still need teams to report what they did, but we need this reporting not on such detailed level. We need them to report, so we will be able to track if some work taken more time than expected. So we, as managers, can see this and can do something with this while it is not too late
Right.
to track the project is going according to the plan. So this is main reason why we need detailed reporting, but not not at the moment. Probably few times a week. I think is enough.
Yeah, it's using only for planning approaches, not for like things that you can tell to your employer you are bad, you not do it in the time. Not, it's just only for a successful project. We need to understand what happens, and reports needed for us in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Well, talking about all this tracking and monitoring and communication is all very important, and you need to lay that foundation out right. But one other big thing that crosses all of these is motivation. How do you keep your teams motivated in this environment when they're all working remotely?
The main motivation, I think, it's a final result, which must be provided by our team, because all of the members of our team working for creation of such application or creation website or some production. So in this difficult situation, we can speak with each member, or we can speak for whole team and tell them that from your effectiveness, the final results depend. We need to keep all the things which done in time. We need to keep the level of quality, and even in this difficult case, even if we are working from home, we need to provide final result with a high quality, and of course it must be done in time, as we discussed it before. So this is the main motivation, and because we are working with motivated teams, I think, from my opinion, we are working properly.
From my experience managing teams, I've always found that it's very important when you have managing remote teams to task each member with a specific project or a specific task that gives them a sense of ownership. And when they take that ownership and they can go off and know that their expectations are to achieve A, B, and C, and go and get that done. I trust you to do it. And I want you to take ownership, and I want you to do whatever you have to do that. And it takes on a little different beast, at least from my experience, giving someone that extra sense of ownership when they're working remotely versus when they're working in an office. And I found that it helps to motivate them further. helps to keep them on track with what they're doing, and gives them a little boost in their morale and how they're approaching just life, knowing that they've been tasked with something, that they own something. And so I found in my experience that that's something very important and can lead to much more cohesiveness.
Yeah, and I would even add here, so not only ownership to show the level of trust, but also we need to empower team members to really own and execute. Because if we tell that, okay, this is your tasks, you decide how you would do this. But afterwards, we go and tell, no, I don't think that this is the best way. Let's do this task my way. So it doesn't add any motivation at all. So when you really decided to transfer some ownership to the team, you need to do this till the end. So you need to allow team even to do some failures and to learn from these failures and mistakes, and to show that team and each person can fail, but and nobody will be punished because of the mistake. And after that, I see that people can be really motivated and really believe that they can do something without micromanagement and without strict management from the top.
Excellent. Well, as we're coming to the end of our webinar, so I'd like to just go around a little bit and talk about what would be your top few tips and suggestions for the managers out there that are now finding themselves managing remotely, something they never did. We've talked about process management, communication, software and tools. So what would be some of your parting wisdom that you would instill upon anybody who's now managing teams remotely where they never did before?
So I would start with really allowing the team to work asynchronously first of all, so everyone will know what to do and will be able to do this in the time when it's like appropriate for the person and with his own schedule. But still, to have some all hands activities like daily meetings and do these activities regularly with set schedule. So entire team will have some routines and rituals, and just keep talking to team members. Do one-on-one meetings, and right now it's even more important than previously. And add some small talks to all meetings, basically, because we're really struggling without colleagues and without talking to many people.
And in the beginning, we need to get the instruction how it can be organized, all the things that which was discussed by us in the beginning of our webinar, how it can be organized inside the home, how it can be planned, and you can also set it up, the personal schedule for each other, as you told you, asynchronized team, non-synchronized team.
And I would add again and just reiterate the importance of setting goals and clear expectations for your team, from a manager to an employee, and from an employee to a manager as well. because trust is a two-way street. And when you're working remotely, it really becomes so important that that level of trust that you have both ways. I'd say that as a manager to an employee, teaching your employees that it's so much more important now to over communicate with their managers. If your manager is coming to you remotely with a question about a project, it's already 3 steps too late, oftentimes, that you should have communicated what was going on earlier. I believe in over communication as an employee to a manager. Keep them filled in so that they won't feel the need to micromanage you. They won't feel the need to have to come to you all day, every day. If you keep them well informed, then they have no reason to disrupt your flow and interrupt what you're doing. And that also adds to that level of trust. And I'd say as a manager working remotely with your employees, response times are so important too. If your employee is reaching out to you, whether it's Skype, whether it's an email, whether it's a voicemail message, whatever it may be, you have to take that time and respond to them. You can't let it go 6, 8, 12, 24 hours or even more. That communication from your manager to your employee and that response time is so vital to keeping that sense of morale up and keeping that sense of teamwork and that corporate culture, so that both ways you have that level of trust and comfort, and you can go about your jobs. And when things come up throughout the day, you have trust in each other that you know how to manage it, take care of it, and get back to work. So those are a few of the things that I would leave everybody with. Set those expectations, make clear goals, and make sure everybody understands what part they play in achieving those goals. That trust that goes both ways, quick response times, and oftentimes over communicate before it's too late. So those are some tips that I would leave with everybody. Any other thoughts? Any questions? Anybody on the call? Of course, feel free to reach out to us. We talked a little bit about Archer Producer. That's our own internal system that we use for managing employees, tagging tasks, and making sure that work is getting done. We as a software development company have built platforms like this for other companies. So if you're new into this and you think that you're going to be managing teams remotely for a long time, feel free to reach out. That could be something that we can help you with, whether it's a full platform or just a part of the platform. But these tools, processes, procedures, communication are all so vital in laying that foundation when your teams are no longer interacting the way they were, keeping that corporate culture going and keeping those goals, keep moving that ball forward. We know we're in very different trying times here. So come together as a team, try to work even more cohesively, help each other out, and everything will be fine.